The jury has reached a verdict in the Karen Read retrial. Let's listen in.
Mr. Foreman, on docket number 2282CR117001, murder in the second degree, what say you? Is the defendant at the bar guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
So say you, Mr. Foreman? So say you? No. Do you agree?
Yes.
Do all of you agree?
Yes.
Thank you. 002, what say you? Is the defendant at the bar not guilty or guilty?
Not guilty.
Of.
Is not guilty or guilty of that charge or any lesser included charge?
Lesser included.
Thank you. Specifically, number 5, operating under the influence of liquor by operating a motor vehicle with a blood alcohol level of 0.08 or greater. Correct?
Yes.
So say you, Mr. Foreman?
Guilty.
So say you all?
Yes. Guilty.
003, what say you? Is the defendant at the bar leaving the scene after accident resulting in death? Is the defendant not guilty or guilty?
Not guilty.
So say you, Mr. Foreman? So say you all? Jurors, hearken your verdict as the court records that you upon your oath say the defendant on 001 is not guilty, on 002 is guilty of operating under the influence of liquor, and 003 not guilty. Thank you.
All right, jurors, everybody please be seated. Jurors, we thank you for your service. We're going to send you back. Your service is complete. I'd like to come back and talk to you for a little bit afterwards. So thank you very much.
All rise. Jurors, follow me.
All right, the verdict is in, and Karen Read has been found not guilty of the most serious charges against her. Let's go right to CNN's Jean Casares, who is outside court. Jean, your response to what we just heard from the jury person.
I think the response here speaks for it all. The crowd is going crazy right here. The hundreds of people that have stood out here day in and day out for Karen Read, they heard that verdict, they know the outcome, and they are now showing their exuberance, their joyful exuberance. I let that sound speak for itself. These were counts that carried second-degree murder, a maximum of life in prison. Second degree was up to 25 years of the manslaughter. It was the lesser included that people wondered on. Now, this is a mixed verdict, I do understand, and that mixed verdict, the operating under the influence, drunk driving, it appears as though there was a conviction on drunk driving. What that amounts to is a fine and suspension of your license for a few months. It has nothing to do with John O'Keefe. They do not believe that Karen Read caused the death of John O'Keefe. That loyalty is now being rewarded by that jury's verdict. And this is what their motto has been: free Karen Read. They picked the pink color because pink was Karen's favorite color, and early on, Karen was asked, what color do you want your supporters to wear? And she said, I want pink. And Rita Lombardi is the one that started this movement, and she grew it from the grassroots up. But that does not mean that the jury's verdict will reflect that. They had to look at the evidence. They had to assess the evidence. Now, the John O'Keefe family is in that courthouse right now. They want justice for their victim, John O'Keefe. His life was taken. His life is gone. And now the question remains, who did this? Because the jury has determined that Karen Read, beyond a reasonable doubt, did not cause his death. that there was reasonable doubt that she did this. So now the quest for justice remains, and will this community be vested in finding the true answers to this horrible, horrible killing?
All right, Jean Casarez, thank you so much. Let me bring back former litigator Lisa Bonner. And Lisa, there's obviously this huge crowd outside the courthouse in Dedham, Massachusetts, which is just outside Boston. And for folks who have not been following the Karen Read trial, folks who do not know why there is a crowd there and why they are cheering she has been found not guilty in the most serious charges. Obviously, she was found guilty of driving while intoxicated, but that's nothing compared to the other charges involving manslaughter. Can you explain to our viewers why there is this crowd and this wellspring of support for Karen Read, the defendant?
That's a great question, Jake. There has been so much hoopla around this case since the first jury ended in a mistrial. There was a lot of speculation whether or not Karen Read actually did this or not. And there was a lot of prosecutorial misconduct in the first trial in terms of the investigator who was not giving truthful evidence. And there was just a lot that went on that did not sit well with not only the jurors, but the public in general. And so the fact that it was a hung jury and they could not come to a conclusion on this really sat in the minds of the public that something might not have been right. Something was amiss. And so when the prosecution decided to retry this case, the defense really needed to come up and step up and put on a vigorous defense, which they did this time. There have been infinite number of documentaries of whodunits, internet sleuths talking about there was a conspiracy to frame Karen Read, and this has been debunked and looked into by, like I said, internet sleuths, people on TikTok, and the whole entire world seemed to have a really vested interest in this. And so I think because the defense came back and put on a very, very vigorous defense and really poked holes in the mind of the jurors and really definitely gave some jurors some food for thought to come back and return a unanimous verdict on the most important charges, which could have placed Karen Read behind bars for a very long time.
Why do you think this verdict was different from the first trial, which resulted in a hung jury?
Well, the defense put on a vigorous cross-examination of the prosecution's witnesses. I think that they went a lot harder. And what they did specifically with the gentleman who was a snowplow driver, they brought him to the forefront and they really, said, listen, you did not see a body on the yard. And he was like, no, I drove past several times. So they really were poking holes in that. They presented alternative evidence in terms of this was not consistent with what a car accident victim would have looked like. It was perhaps bitten by a dog. There was a lot of police misconduct that was brought to the front. So I think in terms of the defense seemed to learn from the mistakes that they made the last time and really just thinking that they might have had it in the bag, and really came back and vigorously put on a defense where they gave, you only need one to come up with reasonable doubt, and they provided enough evidence, it seems, to really talk about and come back with a verdict that said, no, she did not do these things. Now, was she driving under the influence? That seemed to be pretty clear. But in terms of did she or did she not? Was she framed or was she not? Was there police misconduct? There was certainly that. And they came back and they really, really provided enough evidence. And that's all you need is one person and, to hold out. And it looks like it was a very vigorous defense, and it looks like it was a very effective defense. Remember, they only put on a day and a half of defense for the first trial, and this time it went much longer. So I think they really got into the meat of the case.